Hey everyone, welcome back to Cady and Katie. I, as always, am James R.I. Katie, and this magnificent creature to my left is...
I'm also Katie.
You know her. So, much like we were or weren't for the film we're about to talk about, we're not really prepared. We don't have anything in terms of a script or a clever lead-in, so,
I have a book.
That is definitely a step in the right direction. But a couple of days ago, we encountered that rarest of creatures, a film that is not a sequel, or a prequel, or a reboot, or a soft reboot, or a spin-off, or really in any way related to any pre-existing film franchise at all, to the best of my knowledge, Mortal Engines. So, let's talk about it.
What is that? That is London.
Yes, Mortal Engines, based off of the book of the same name by Philip Reeve. Society as we know it has wiped itself out, and some 1100 years in the future, the settlements of the New World have decided that hunting is vastly superior to gathering. As the now mobile London makes its way across Europe to once again attempt to conquer Asia, an outsider and a Londonian who looks like the love child of Eddie Redmayne and Jared Leto uncover a conspiracy and decide that maybe that's not cool. So Katie.
Yes.
Opinions. You must have them. Could you espouse them in a way that's not terribly spoilerish?
Probably not.
Oh, okay, well, let me ask you this. Did you like it?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I felt, and it could possibly be because of that thing you mentioned earlier, where it was a fairly, it was a book, so not completely original idea, but for all intents and purposes, original to the film industry today. It was a very refreshing new story, and I think that's a large part of the reason why I enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah.
Hey, James.
Yes?
Do you have opinions? About this movie specifically?
Well, I was gonna say yes, because I do, but some of them are good or some of them are bad, so they kind of even out in the middle. So I guess my net opinion is not. Okay. But, like you were saying, just the fact that this movie exists is refreshing. It is based off of a book and nothing else. A lot of really cool stuff going on. Some issues with the story, for me personally. Great art direction, things like that. A cast almost entirely of, no-name actors.
Which was also nice.
And, yeah, in the end, they took a lot of risks. I mean, just making the movie in the first place was a risk, and I am just really pleased to see that. And I am interested enough that if it does get sequels, because I know the book has sequels, I'll see them. I'm curious to see where it'll go. Maybe they can clear up some of the stuff that I wasn't all that solid on. So yeah, with that out of the way, I mean, what do we usually do? Casting, right? So let's talk about the cast of no-name actors. So should be really fast.
Mm-hmm. First, we have Christian Rivers, who directed the film. It was not directed by Peter Jackson, although it was, the large draw of the film was that his name was on it. He did the screenplay, along with Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, the Lord of the Rings crew, if you will. Christian, I think there was only one other small project that he had worked on as a director.
Yeah, a couple of, small independent films that I've never heard of.
And then a large part of what he had done is as part of the art team, the art department for the Lord of the Rings movies and a lot of other things that Peter Jackson has worked on too. Yeah. So
Hester Shaw, the female lead, and really I would argue the lead, the main character, played by Hera Hilmar, Icelandic actress, I believe. Strong character. I found her really interesting. I liked her story. And yeah, like I said, she really hasn't been in anything else I've ever heard of. Maybe in Iceland she's more famous, but yeah, it was nice to see a fresh face, and she did a great job.
So next, opposite of our main character Hester, we have Robert Sheehan, who played Tom Natsworthy. He looked very familiar to me, but I don't think I've actually really seen anything he had been in.
Kind of looked a little bit like Jared Leto and Eddie Redmayne.
Fair. The title that jumped out at me on the IMDb was The Borrowers, a TV adaptation, not the more widely accepted movie. But yeah, he was quite good as well.
Hugo Weaving, we all know him. I'm just going to take a break right now to let you guys know that, unlike the usual situation, we're not alone in the house. So there's going to be some creaking and talking and dog noises, and just going to have to live with it. Hugo Weaving, we all know him, we love him. He was Thaddeus Valentine, the main villain of the piece. He's got just about as much nerd cred as any actor can these days. He was Agent Smith in the Matrices. He was Red Skull in the first Captain America. I guess he was in Happy Feet. That's a thing. But also, obviously, he played Elrond in Lord of the Rings and nothing else. And yeah, I mean, I think he's a good actor. We all know his skill, and honestly, I think that he played the villain fine. There were some issues I might have had with the character, but it was all writing. And his performance was as good as it could have been, and as good as I expected it to be.
Yeah, and a pleasant surprise for sure, because I knew nothing about this movie except for like maybe a trailer or two that I had seen, and I didn't know he was in it at all. It's hilarious.
Her reaction was adorable.
And then we have Ji-hai, who played Anna Fang, the mysterious assassin lady, sort of. Pirate, not assassin.
I wouldn't even. She's a fugitive, really.
Fugitive. What's the word I'm looking for?
Terrorist.
I guess.
Depending on who you ask. Yeah, rebel. Rebel.
Rebel works.
She's a rebel.
Rebel works. I don't think she's really been in much. The IMDb page of hers was fairly sparse.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other projects with Asian-sounding names that I've never heard of. So, but yeah, what'd you think?
She was very cool.
Yeah, interesting style. Again, probably not really up to her. The costumer probably did most of the work there, but
she pulled it off.
Yeah, she was Obi-Wan, basically. That was her role. I'm gonna compare this movie to Star Wars quite a few times probably, so might as well just start there.
Sure.
Ronan Raftery as Beavis Pod. I know they call him Bevis, but I'm gonna say Beavis until the end of time. He was one of the small handful of actors I actually did recognize. He was a recurring character in the delightful British sitcom Moon Boy, that I thoroughly enjoy, and if you have the time, go on Hulu, watch it. It's delightful. And the only other notable thing that most people have probably seen and or heard of, he was in the first Fantastic Beasts movie.
Was he?
Yes, and when I was watching this, I had this weird deja vu moment because we just watched that movie for the first time, or she did, a month and a half ago, and she recognized him, and I was like, he looks familiar to me too, and then I looked him up. Yeah, he was Desi Dolan. Nope, that's the character in Moon Boy. Langdon Shaw in the first Fantastic Beasts. He was. It was a relatively minor role, but he was in it. And the only other thing I probably recognize him from is Captain America as the army heckler. Oh, I should actually probably talk about his character briefly, because to be honest, his was one of the roles that I had the biggest problems with. I'm not going to get into super detail, but he didn't really do much. He was mostly there for expositional purposes, and then he just kind of disappeared.
Next we have Leela George, who was Catherine Valentine, the daughter of Thaddeus Valentine. I don't think I've really seen anything she was in either. Again, a lot of the people this is like the first big thing that they've been in. Her character was the conscious, I guess, attempt for Thaddeus, but I mean...
Yeah, that's a good... But
the daughter, so
very much like Beavis, she seemed to mostly exist for expositional purposes. In fact, her story was directly tied. Well, a large part of it was directly tied to Beavis. They were on screen a lot together, and I mean, she didn't disappear as completely as Beavis did, but
being the daughter,
her story, it served its purpose, and then and I guess that's better than oh, we have to find something for her to do, but at the same time, it should have been that way the whole time.
Well, my theory at this moment in time, even without having any information from the book, is that she'll play a bigger role.
Yeah, she seems like the kind of character that will definitely be more important moving forward.
The daughter of the main bad guy redeeming the city of London.
Yeah. Patrick Malahide as Magnus Chrome, who was the, I guess, what was his title?
Lord Mayor, I think.
The guy who's actually, technically, the president of London or whatever. Technically, Thaddeus's boss, but he doesn't really have a major role. We recognize the actor, of course, from Game of Thrones. He played Balon Greyjoy. And I guess he was also in Bridget Jones's Baby, which I have never seen and probably never will, but I've heard of it, so I listed it. And George Cornelius in Luther, which I have heard of, and I know a lot of people that really like that show, but I couldn't really get into it.
It's in my queue.
So, I don't know. Maybe I'll give it another try sometime. But, yeah, his character, he had to exist, but he didn't really serve any major important purpose.
He was the old ideals and old power.
Yeah, I mean...
Next, we have Stephen Lang, who played Shrike, who was a very T-1000 looking robot guy.
No, robot, zombie, hybrid.
Yeah, they were reanimated people through Lazarus soldiers. Lazarus was in there somewhere, but they had been used as like a military type thing, and then
in the last war, whatever. It was
the 60-minute war. So it was called.
Oh, they were that old?
I think so.
No, I thought there had been conflicts since then that they were used in. But I mean if they're hard to tell how old a zombie robot is.
It's interesting too because the character was, I think, fully animated.
Oh, absolutely, 100% CGI.
Yeah, and it looked like it was a different process too from what is done in the past with like Golem and stuff in Lord of the Rings.
Well, I suspect it was mocap though. I mean, they probably did the facial and everything.
Yeah, but because that seemed to be a large part of the performance too. Obviously, it was like the emotion and that sort of thing. It was very interesting to see.
I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I saw the character, I assumed it was Andy Serkis because Peter Jackson and CGI, and I was like, oh, it's gotta be.
That's fair.
It wasn't. The actor you'll recognize. He was the leader of the paramilitary forces in Avatar, the bad guy. That's really the only thing I know him from. As far as the character goes, though, I really liked Shrike. He was probably the most interesting part of the movie to me, other than just the basic concept. We'll get more into it in spoilers, but yeah. And last, and debatably least, just for his role in the story, we had Colin Salmon as Chudley Pomeray, which just saying it out loud feels weird. Anyway, this actor, another one of the faces I did recognize. He's done recurring roles, bit parts on a couple of shows that I've watched, and most other people probably haven't. He was a regular on The Increasingly Poor Decisions of Todd Margaret. Again, delightful on Netflix. Watch it now.
Seriously, pause it.
And he was in one episode of Master of None, and I guess he's British, so he popped up in an episode of Doctor Who because duh. But yeah, his character in this, I don't even know what his point was. He had a few lines, and then
the curator,
and then occasionally they would cut to him like reacting to some of the horrible things going on. Oh, that's right. Okay, you're right. He was in charge of the
British Museum,
but it's still like the movie could have functioned perfectly well without him in it. So, not the actor's fault, but just stating a fact.
That's fair.
As usual, we're done with casting. We're going to get into spoiler territory. I'll try to remember to put a timestamp. And unlike other movies that we've reviewed, this one, it actually kind of matters because the trailers really didn't give anything away. And like we said, there's not really anything to be known unless you've read the book. So, right off the bat, one thing I really liked, when they're doing the Universal logo at the beginning, and they used that logo to actually do some exposition, because as the word is panning over the globe, you can see all these huge purple explosions going off, and it already kind of set the tone, and you got to okay, well, clearly the world has been destroyed by big purple explosions,
or is in the process.
So it actually did, because they didn't go super out of their way to explain a lot, but it just like right off the bat you kind of got a sense that that's where we were, and I really liked it, even though it's just a really minor thing. If they hadn't done it, it would have been fine. I wouldn't have been thought twice about it, but
it's a good touch. Nice touch. The first thing, and I did like that too, but like the first thing I thought, like my first initial thought was as they were coming up to the little mining town. I wish I could remember what it was called. Salt something? It was Salt something.
The Salty Spittoon. How tough are you?
Immediately I wanted to watch Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh yeah, I can't believe my brain did not go there even once.
Yeah.
Until just now. How could I not have thought of that?
Yeah, I mean, I quickly got lost in like the actual like movie itself, and that like went to the wayside. But just like the intricacies of like the town,
it's a moving settlement, not just the people, the actual settlement, which is just it's a cool idea, and it's what got that's the one thing that the trailers really did give away is that hey, there are a bunch of cities that have wheels and treads and stuff.
Yes.
And that it was just an interesting and unique enough idea that I wanted to see the movie anyway. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, immediately I was kind of drawn in by the whole world, which is one thing that is a thing Peter Jackson's good at doing is creating that world.
And to that effect, I was actually kind of surprised to find out that Jackson was not the director, because the second thing I thought after, it's cool how they used the logo for exposition was 7 for the Dwarf Lords, because it's got that voiceover at the beginning that just sort of like really quickly sets the tone and in sparse detail catches you up on what happened, and then the movie starts. Mm-hmm. So,
which I mean, if the director has always worked with Peter Jackson,
yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense. So, and if he wrote the screenplay, so it would be there. Yeah.
It's the first time I think ever. Well, except for maybe Game of Thrones, but not a movie, where I watched the movie, and before it was even over, I wanted to read the book and see exactly how much they pulled from it.
Literally, like, when the credits started rolling, she turned to myself and my fellow poor taste bud, Mike, and said, I just bought the book on Amazon.
Yep, and it's here already, which is amazing. Very quick turnover, which even with...
Today's Sunday.
Friday night. But anyway, I immediately wanted to kind of jump into it just because it did, and there were many moments where like little things would happen between characters, or like they would an offhanded comment, and I was like, I bet that has so much behind it.
It probably means so much more than what they're giving us here.
So I'm already a couple chapters into it, but it's very exciting.
In the really the first opening scene, I was really enthralled by the fact, and this relates to the whole, if there's one thing about the movie that I really loved in the first place, it was the art direction. I mean, they had a very clear vision, very creative, lots of interesting stuff going on, primo stuff. But one thing I really appreciated is in that opening scene when they're in the Salty Spittoon, you can tell that it's a real set. I mean, there's like all these, there's hydraulic pistons and stuff all over the place, and everyone, the costuming is all great, but you can tell that they're occupying a real space with real props, and that's always great to see because you can kind of feel it no matter how good the CGI is. It felt real, and I really appreciated that. Those feelings would sort of float away from me as the movie went on, but that opener was strong.
The opener was strong, and then it kind of came back when they were in that the trader town or whatever it was, when they had been like Shanghai kidnapped by that guy. They were being sold off.
Oh yeah, there. I'll talk about him later.
But it kind of came back then too, like the whole like set and the whole like mini establishment, I guess.
Yeah.
Settlement is the word I wanted. That's something that in the book, the big difference is I'm 37 pages in.
Nice.
Already on chapter 5. It is a young adult book, like a young adult novel, which from the movie, it felt much more like an adult, like sci-fi book. Like
there was a decent amount of blood in it.
Rings. Well, it's already too, like it's not like a little kid's book. It feels more like Harry Potter, like that kind of like age group.
Well, which Harry Potter? 1 or 7?
Oh, 1.
One is a very child-friendly book, and then you get to about 4, and then the characters grow up with the readers, which is I really like about this.
So Tom is 15.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Like they're kids in the book, basically. But it's, and then as you kind of read into it, like it does have like a young adult book feel to it more so than like the
conspicuous absence of sex.
Well, no, not even that. I mean, because it's formatted even like the big lettering, and like it's not like you know what I mean? No,
clearly not, because I read Animorphs. That's not even really young adult. That's children's. Which is weird. Some of that shit gets. There's one.
Oh yeah.
Megamorphs.
Well, I don't know if that one will count because that's like a. Whoa!
You almost dropped the whoopee cushion.
Wait, like bigger lettering and like the spacing is different. It's.
I don't notice these things, even though I have a degree in them.
Well, I do. Whatever, it's fine. Anyway, I expected it to be more of a what am I trying to say?
I have no idea.
Like an adult epic, like not.
Okay, you were surprised by the tonal difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, remember when the Minions showed up in this movie?
Yes. There's that same moment in the book, and it's Pluto and Mickey.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not the Minions. That was definitely done to like.
Well, it's a Universal project, so yeah.
Well, that
they
too,
couldn't do
actually,
Pluto and Mickey without
true.
Paying an arm and a leg, I assume.
But yeah, no, that it was like a nod to just show you like how ridiculous like.
Oh, I know, and maybe it's just because I hate those particular characters.
Oh no, I hate the Minions.
Every ounce of my being, and I don't even live with children. I can't imagine your life. But to its credit, that, and then they had the Twinkie, and then they had the Sunbeam toaster.
Inkies.
Yeah,
what they call
because the tea was rubbed off the packaging. But for a movie, for the premise of this movie, there could have been a lot more of that, and there really wasn't a lot, and I respect them for that. Mm. But though, on some level, because there was so little, when it did happen, it was shocking, it was startling. Yeah, And then they made that stupid joke about the Twinkies. It's like, oh yeah, that thing, the expiration date says you're over 1,000 years old, and they're just like, Twinkies, they live forever. And I get the joke, but at the same time, 1,000 years, those things would be paste.
Obviously not, since they lasted that long.
Well, I guess poor taste buds is going to have to do an experiment. Where can I get a time machine?
The time turner's been hidden, so can't use that.
Damn.
Yeah. In my hunt for the Mortal Engine book, I managed to find a copy that didn't have like the whole movie tie-in where it had like a poster or whatever on the front, because that just drives me crazy. It does say now a major motion picture, but
yeah, the original cover looks nothing like that. I know only from Wikipedia. It's like an old Victorian-looking drawing.
This was definitely a reprint. I think this was from like the mid-2000s. It's definitely not like a
It says now a major motion picture. It's not from the mid-2000s. It's from like last year. Or this year.
That's fair. Although
they wouldn't have said that if it's.
Well, when is it?
This printing had to have been 2018.
Probably. Well, the book was 2001, but regardless.
Yeah.
I still had to work to find one that didn't have like the movie poster on it or whatever. Yeah. But I did come across like criticisms that people had for it. I feel like a lot of people who had certain things to say hadn't read the book and or maybe didn't realize that it was a book.
Hi, I'm one of those people.
But there were a lot of moments that I had mentioned before I was expecting like a deep lore for, or oh hey, that probably connects back to something in the book and would make it better. And having started the book itself, I feel like some issues that people had with it may have been like a lost in translation, moving the characters from like 15-year-old kids to like mid-early 20s. Yeah. Because there were some things that I was just like, that's a really weird like way to do something. Or the relationship between Tom and Hester as well was kind of like the development was very weird, and it might it might be because in the book they were kids, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see as I get further and further into the books too, the exact like how things were changed because of that. Cool. It's a big point for someone to like rewrite a whole book to movie for.
Speaking of Hester, can I just say that I am so happy to live in a world where we can have a major motion picture that has a female lead with a huge grizzly scar on her face, because that kind of shit would not fly as recently as a decade or two ago, tops. She's the scar. It's not even like distracting. It's part of her face, and it doesn't make her any less beautiful or powerful or just a cool character. And I think that that's technically social progress, even if getting scars kind of sucks.
Yeah, and the sequence in the movie too, the flashback where it shows how she got the scar it was pretty brutal too. A thing that actually, and in the book I have a feeling it's similar to, is not shying away from that sort of thing.
Good.
There's some crazy like death and violence later in the movie. It's not like explicit, but
it's true.
I was expecting
rather than.
I was expecting them to be like, oh, we're going to stop it in the nick of time, and no, it just happens, which I appreciate very much, because it doesn't happen that way really in movies.
Yeah, I mean, well, even the Death Star blew up Alderaan.
Oh yeah.
So.
But I mean, that was a long time ago.
No, I know, but that's what. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. It's just it was it was not a total victory on the good guys' part. So speaking of society, I feel like elements of this were intended to be like sort of subtle social commentary, but I don't have enough wherewithal to say for sure what it was, or even if it actually was happening. Maybe Brexit.
Literally, I'm getting up and rolling away. There was a point, kind of jumping ahead towards the end again.
Yeah.
There was a point at the end of the movie where they were like scrambling to assemble and go and fight off London and keep their wall from being destroyed. Where I fully expected
spoils in attack position.
Yes, I fully expected like it to stop and like that be where the movie ends, and then if
it did. If they were planning on doing a sequel, that seemed almost like
it had that moment in Star Wars where it was the cliffhanger, the whole we're scrambling, where everyone's gonna die, we have to figure out something soon, and then it just ends to kind of pick up in the next movie.
Yeah, but that was in Empire.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
not the first one was a very good self-contained story, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
But it had that feel where it almost could have, and I'm not sure if I would have rather it did that, or I mean, because the way it progressed and went on, I enjoyed that part of the story, but it had that feeling. It was very weird.
I mean, since we're there, I have some observations about the end as well, because like I remember the moment you're talking about where like they're getting ready and the music kind of swells and it almost feels like it's going to cut to the credits. But it didn't, and there was another 30 minutes of movie left.
I almost wonder if it's a situation where like they bleed it into the next book, like Fellowship and Two Towers did too, where it actually ends like chapters into the next book.
Yeah, exactly. Because the whole Sheila thing, and So the movie continues for a while, and like they solve one issue, and then another one sort of comes up, and it's like they do the big one, but then they have to deal with the ramifications and the
domino effect.
And it's like what I have listed here. It's they destroy the big gun, or they activate the kill switch, which I assumed was just a firmware thing. I didn't expect that gun to like explode, but whatever. And then the gun's gone, and then Tom goes in and kills London's engine, and then they bring down Thaddeus's airship, and even then Thaddeus still isn't dead. And then they cut to him, and I actually looked away long enough to write a note and missed whether or not they showed him getting run over.
Yes.
But it was sort of, even if they didn't, it was clear that was what they were going for. But we didn't see the body after. Just saying.
No, we saw it up until about, it was, 6 feet away from the tire rolling over, and then it pulled back and there was an explosion.
But those are deep treads, though. Maybe it just got stuck up in there, and he's like, ah, crap. You mentioned the scene where they're trying to sell off Tom and Hester as slaves, and my favorite part of that scene was the actual auctioneer, who had a terrible toupee, but his coat, I don't know if you know, you probably did, it was entirely covered in white buttons.
Yes.
Like you couldn't even see the coat itself. It was just buttons.
Like the really nice ivory buttons.
Yeah,
too.
and like all different varieties.
Buttons.
It was really cool looking.
I liked it.
And I really want it. I mean, I could make it. All I need is a coat and your employee discount.
I don't have that many buttons. You have to special order that many buttons. I think my favorite moments in the movie in general were just like the banter between the two of them, Tom and Hester.
Yep.
And just that was like the moment where she realized that she really couldn't leave him. There were moments where she was like, well, I'd leave you behind, and just trying to get rid of him. And the whole time he's, super certain that, he would never leave her, which he doesn't. And it was amusing. And also the badass fights.
Yeah.
Those were nice.
The fight choreography was pretty solid. Speaking of, I agree with you. The beginning of their relationship was fun to watch. But then there was that moment that almost came out of freaking left field for me, where Shrike is finally encountering her, and he realizes that she loves him. If they were 15, I'd be like, oh yeah, I totally buy that, because 15-year-olds are stupid. But the way the movie presents it, it seems like they've only known each other for a couple of weeks. I'm sure that that's not the case. It's probably a more sizable amount of time. But the point is, it didn't feel earned. Which is a real shame, because, as I mentioned before, the Shrike arc was by far my favorite part of the movie. And sadly, I realized too late, in the third act, that the whole point of it had nothing to do with anything else other than to get the kill switch into her hand. And that it made me so sad because he was an interesting character and like weirdly empathetic in a way that, I mean, I'm not a zombie or a robot, but he just seemed like the relationship he had and like the surrogate father. And maybe it's because I'm getting old, but those kinds of stories always kind of hit me in a weird way.
Well, and the surrogate father thing too, like in her bandana that she always had was like a red, and in the, if I recall, the picture of his kid, that when it's shown, he's like the little red hat on, like just the connection there too.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the weirdest, not weirdest, and the more unusual thing I think about their relationship and the way it was portrayed is they don't ever kiss.
Oh yeah, I know.
They don't ever like explicitly. I wonder if it's more of just it's like just the friendship love.
Yeah,
it was presented in a very weird way.
I meant to say is like it could just be that, like, especially because she's presented as like this cold. I mean, not her fault, just the circumstances of her life have turned her into like this cold, unfeeling, I don't relate to anybody, stoic. And the love she could have been describing could have just been the realization that she actually she cares about another person's continued existence. And maybe that was enough for Shrike because of the nature of Shrike's Frankenstein life.
Well, she had been willing to become like him and forget everything. So
well, exactly. So I mean, it did kind of work, but it still, the way it was presented, it felt a little jarring. And like I said, because of the way the movie is paced, it doesn't really feel, we don't see that relationship grow so well. Oh, fucking Airhaven.
What about it?
Well, okay, there's a town in the movie, and I assume the book. It's basically, you know how all the other settlements are tanks. This is a Zeppelin town. It's suspended in the air. It's basically Cloud City. It all comes back to Star Wars.
Highly flammable.
Well, see, and I love the way it looks. I love the idea. It's super cool. But when they get off the ship at the docks, there's a big warning sign that says no sparks, no smoking, no whatever. And as soon as, obviously hydrogen makes more sense because it's more readily available for something like that. But at the same time, that is a stupid way to settle. One guy walks off a boat with a staticky, gets off a ship with a staticky sweater, and the whole thing just goes if something goes wrong, the whole town burns and they fall miles to the ground.
Maybe no that's survivors.
All they had. I know. Yes, they're up away from people, but then there's a gunfight like 2 minutes later.
Well, yeah.
Why do they even let them have guns?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they're in charge, but still, I can't see past it how bad an idea it was.
Well, that's another, and this is kind of throughout the movie, not necessarily at the end. And the moment I'm thinking of with what I'm about to say is in the very beginning when Tom is chasing Hester through the underbelly of London, when all the saws and blades are coming down, cutting up the little salt shack.
Yep.
And visually it looks stunning. Like there's all the moving pieces, all the intricacies of all of this, but it's so busy and there's so much happening, and there are moments where that happens kind of throughout, where it kind of takes away from what could have been the story or what could have been or what should have been the focus. It was very, and then because they were running through it, I'm like, where are they going? And it was very weird, and I don't know.
It was more about the chase than where they were chasing.
I feel like that might have been that, and the point where they were trying to, fast forward the characters by like 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I think those were kind of two things that like audiences kind of maybe got hung up on.
Like I said, the pacing is a little bit weird, especially for some of the characters we're supposed to care about. And then, as I mentioned, there's that little B story where Beavis and Catherine, like they're still in London. Beavis saw Thaddeus push Tom into the chute. Mulcher? What do you call it?
It was just a chute.
Oh, I know, but it was spraying out crap. The exhaust pipe. He saw it happen. Thaddeus didn't know that he saw it happen, and then he talked to his friend Catherine and was like, oh, your dad might not be such a good guy, and blah, blah, blah. And then they sort of sneak around for a while, and the purpose is to keep us informed on what the villain's up to. But it's a movie. We don't need to follow characters that we don't care about for that to happen. You can just cut to Thaddeus and have him be doing things.
Yeah.
And the characters, there's really no reason for Beavis to be in the movie at all.
As
far as I'm concerned.
I think that might be the whole, like, it's his daughter, she's learning what he's doing, and I think that might be driving her story for later if there's.
And again,
later.
if there is a sequel, then I'm sure that it will probably be more relevant. But it was like, oh, we introduced these characters, and now we don't know what to do with them. The elements of this that were problematic to me were mostly things like that. Shrike's whole thing, as interesting as it was, in terms of the plot, it was just to get the kill switch, and then it's not mentioned at all for the rest of the time, really. And they're just there so that we can see what the villain's doing, even though we can see what the villain's doing. But conversely, and this brings me back to a point that, again, Michael made at the end of the movie. He was talking about, well, if he has the technology for this weapon, why not use it for energy? Because, like, the whole point, in Thaddeus's mind, he wants to conquer so that he can get their resources, in theory. Mm-hmm. And while I get Michael's argument, and it's a perfectly sound argument, and I wish someone in the movie had said it to him, I'm glad that he brought it up, because it ties back to one of our first reviews, because you remember Avengers Infinity War. Thanos
heard of it.
Gets the Infinity Gauntlet, godlike powers, and then decides to use those powers to exterminate 50% of all life. Mm-hmm. I assume, like, animate life, because destroying, cabbages would kind of defeat the purpose. But the point is, he does it so that there will be more than enough resources for everyone that's left. Now, people have raised the argument, why doesn't he just use his godlike powers to make more resources? Mm-hmm. And I spent a while thinking about this, and to be honest, it's not a character flaw in terms of writing, because Thanos, or Thaddeus, he was manually executing this burden of his for so many years, probably thousands of years, going around with an army killing, so that they could, the left behind could live better lives, in theory. As far as we know, he might not have even known about the Infinity Stones until, a few years ago, really. Mm-hmm. So he's been doing this for so long that you kind of get it in your head that this is your burden. And then he finds out about this godlike power that he could wield. It makes sense that, like, it doesn't occur to him that there's another option. Yep. And Thaddeus is the same way. He got this idea into his head long ago, and he's just been doing it. So in that regard, screw you, Mike. I actually don't have a problem with that.
I actually had the same discussion with him too. I was like, well, it's because it's all that he's known. It's not herd mentality at that point, but the people of London are behind him. Yeah. He has an entire city.
Though I suspect that if more of them knew exactly what he was up to, they might not approve of some of it.
But hey, we're going to go conquer these people. It's the last thing standing in our way. Like, it's, we'll beat the bigger cities, which weren't really mentioned in the movie at all. But, I mean, I agree with that. That totally makes sense.
So, and I think it's something that people that point things like that out as plot holes should really be more mindful of. Mm. Because you gotta ask what's true for the character, because that's really what matters. It's not, logic.
No. It's just what matters most to the character.
There's the one other big Star Wars parallel. the reveal that, supposedly, I mean, I haven't seen the birth certificate, Thaddeus is Hester's father. Which I have really mixed feelings about, because as soon as he appeared in that flashback and she said he used to visit all the time, I immediately knew that at least her parents were boning.
Oh, 100%.
And I was like, I bet she's his father. Don't be her father.
Is that what you were mumbling?
Don't be her father. Just don't be her father. Just don't. And then it happened, and I was like, well, I knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
But then I was like, at some point, it's like, it's the, like, short of Rosebud, it's like the original movie twist.
Yeah. And I'll let you know, too, if that's actually in the book.
And, well, first of all, he could have just been saying it to fuck with us. That's entirely possible. And it has occurred to me, and I kind of hope that that's how it turns out, because that's the only way to really... But it's also kind of sad that we live in a world where, like, things like that do happen, but because Star Wars did it first 30 years ago...
Yeah.
40 years... Oh, God, I'm old. No, 40 years ago. It's like, that's supposed to be... I think maybe, for me, part of it was just that it was so obvious ahead of time. And I like my twists a little bit more subtle, like the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. which the movie didn't have to have a twist. I wasn't expecting a twist, and then it happened, and it made perfect sense, and it didn't contradict anything, and it was genuinely surprising.
It happened. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but
just the flashbacks, and I was
when he said that I was just like, yep.
There's something you should know, and I was like, all right, cool. Just push him over the edge. It's fine.
So yeah, Mortal Engines. Katie.
Yes.
Would you recommend this film?
Yeah, I would, if only for the fact that it is such an original concept at this point in time, not related to anything that's currently out there, except of course for the book. And then if you're the type of person who lives for that, backstory and lore, I would recommend the book. Only a few chapters into it, but I mean, I can already tell that it's going to flesh out at least a few things that I had questions about in the movie, and then I'll be super prepared for the next one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Assuming that Sweet China money comes in.
Assuming that it gets, then, and if not, I'll just keep reading the books. Yeah. James.
Yep.
Would you recommend?
Ness. Somewhere in the middle. I don't think this movie's for everybody. I think it was worth seeing for me just because it's a steampunk thing. It's got really interesting art direction, and again, I have an arts degree, so I care about that stuff. And then, like a lot of really interesting conceptual stuff, and again, it's original. It's about as original as films can get these days. And, I'm curious about the story. The overall story isn't terrible, it's just the execution of some elements of it that just kind of bug me. If you're a film scholar, probably not. If you're looking for something to do before Mary Poppins comes out, you got a few days. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't want those 2 hours back. I'll put it that way. It's worth seeing if you want to see it. So I guess that's another episode in the bag.
Yes, it is.
So the usual drill. Tell if you enjoyed this video, tell your friends, like, comment, subscribe, get our names tattooed on your bodies somewhere. And until next time, which will probably be very soon, we're Katie and Katie.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared.
Let's try that again. Mm-hmm. We're Katie and Katie, and we'll see you soon.
Salthook. It's Salthook.
Oh, the...